cello. She's a cellist. Yeah, she finished in new school. She graduated just last spring.
Good morning. We are about to start. I'm going to make a short introduction.
Yes.
Good morning. Follow my voice, please. Come to room 303. Come to room 303.
I just want to finish, go home exactly.
Are we all here in the room? Okay. So I'll introduce our next presenter, Joseph Alter, Professor Artistic Director, San Diego State University, Joe Alter Dance, and he's presenting Problem of Problems.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, I just really want to thank everybody that's here for all the presentations and fellowship that's happened before this moment. It's really shaped. Like I keep going, oh yeah. I need to know more about this. I'd like to know more about that. But the one thing I did notice was that a lot of these presentations, you get the 1 minute sign. And suddenly there's not a lot of room for discussion. So I have about a half hour, and I actually designed this to last 20 minutes. On that note also, if anything, just kind of, if like you want more elaboration, or you're like, this is curious, or what the fuck are you talking about? Please feel free. These are ideas. I actually put this entire presentation at one point into a form of all questions. And I do that as a practice because this idea of knowing, I kind of think of things in series of threes. So for example, you have those of them that are people that are what I would call naive. They just, if they hear something, they just buy it. Then you have people who are cynical, who just reflexively reject it. I find those two to be kind of lazy responses. They don't really require anything of you, except to either accept or reject. And then there's another category of thinking of approach that I personally lean into as frequently as possible, and hopefully remind myself to do as frequently as possible, and that is curious skepticism, which for me translates as, I don't know, let's find out. Let's interrogate it, let's ask questions about it. Let's see what we're really asking ourselves. So one of the things that I work with a tremendous amount, I call this is actually the problem of problems, the question of questions, and the practice of practice. Actually is what I teach in my pedagogy class for juniors in a BFA BA program. And the reason I frame it this way is because, can I ask you guys a question? You're all experts, but imagine you're not an expert and you walk into a classroom and you open the door. What is it you think they're teaching in there? Like, what is happening? What are they teaching? Now, most lay people and young dancers will say technique, or choreography, or any of XYZ things that happen to correlate purely with just what they see is physically being done in the room. But I submit that we've all heard the term hidden curriculum. Well, in a dance class, there is a radically hidden curriculum. And if I were to list a bunch of things, we'd all agree, oh yeah, that's in a dance class. That's critical thinking. Oh yeah, that's in a dance class. Culture, that's in a dance class. But more often than not, it's implied, not explicit. And the problem of problems comes from just that. When I was a graduate student at Ohio State University back in the day, B.B. Miller was teaching a class and it kind of unlocked something for me. Really, like, what the hell is it we think we're doing when we're in a classroom? And the problem of problems for me is, like, part of it is about creating a common point of reference. How many of you have used the word center in a classroom? Like, center,
Oh.
right? But that word center, or the word core, conflated frequently by students and dancers too, right? The core and center are not the same thing. And center in grab technique is not the same as center in ballet or center in hip hop or anything else. And in fact, a lot of these things don't have centers. If your movement is polycentric, it has many centers, right? So whereas core, well, one of the problems I see is that we lack a common point of reference. So we say things that we assume everybody understands, and they all act from their own understanding of it. And then we wonder why the hell they don't know what they're doing. Like, why are they moving that way? Well, because you didn't give them a common point of reference. And I work in non-absolutes. So I really say, in this class, the point of reference for core is floor of pelvis. And it's not a crunch, it's a light lift in the floor of your pelvis. Most easily found on an exhale. I just say, how many of you know what a Kegel is? It gets complicated when they're men on the class, or male identifying, because some of them don't know what it is, and then I have to quietly explain it to them because first years generally are a little squeamish with anatomy. Excuse me a second. I will pause sometimes, because I like to reflect a little bit before I say something. So if I stop, don't think I'm lost. I'm just finding space. I wrote this when I went up for full professor. It is my belief and practice that we, as people, community members, educators, and as leaders, have a profound ethical responsibility to consciously evolve. I actively practice conscious evolution through my engagement with contemplative practices and pedagogies, somatic work, the study and application of Robert Kegan's work in developmental psychology, different philosophies of mind, and other activities that I trust cultivate the capacities of curiosity, mindfulness, compassion, and empathy. Cultivating these capacities leads to an enhanced ability to effectively deal with complexity, engage in creativity, explore curiosity, and consider, include, and act from multiple perspectives. These capacities are critical in developing innovative solutions that successfully identify and address 21st century needs. Now, I say that across the board. We all know that the statistics are that about 23% of the people that graduate from higher education programs actually get jobs as dancers, right? So if I think my job is to get people into dance companies only, then I'm not doing my job. Because my job is to prepare them for the world. Here's the thing, many of us are parents or parent adjacent. We have people we love who are of college age. I've been incredibly blessed to have two daughters who are both in college as I've been a professor. And so I get this feedback loop where I get to really listen to my kids unpack things with me. And I'm curious. You know, a lot of times people think, oh, these young people, they don't know what they're talking about. They do know what they're talking about. They just haven't learned how to articulate it in ways that evoke action in the context in which they live. So everyone seems, oh, they're just pissed. No, they're pissed. but they do know what they're talking about. And the things that piss them off piss me off, because they're gonna be in this world. They're gonna be in this world and among us. A little caveat, we are functioning in an interconnected set of systems that are not optimized for individual nor collective well-being. They just aren't. That's it.
Say that again, please.
We are functioning in an interconnected set of systems that are not optimized for individual nor collective well-being. They're extractive. To cope, we are told to be mindful, to meditate, to exercise, so that we can be more effective in our jobs. I agree with that. I do it every single day. I meditate, I exercise, I question, I read, I do all the things I can possibly do so that I can effectively manage the exponentially more complex world that I'm living in than the one I came into. Exponentially. The rate of change used to be like this. I am in fact a boomer, which when my students say, okay, boomer, I just smile and say, yes, I am. The result of all this, though, is we try to do more and more with less and less. And then we're doing all this well-being stuff so that we can act in these realms, which we are being told to do, but we're being asked to do this with very few resources frequently, with really no support, and then there's all the hidden labor that all of you do from day to day that is not compensated, that you have to keep making room for. So I would submit that mindfulness in the service of that is not mindfulness. Mindfulness is an opportunity for us to examine our values, to cultivate our abilities to be well. I very much enjoyed your presentation this morning, your classroom, because it touched on so many things. The group rules was a point of creating common points of reference, right? If we don't know what they are, then how do we function? The problem of problems in a certain way is, for me, like, we all walk into a meeting or into a classroom or into a relationship, and each one of us has some idea of not only what the problem is, but how important it is. But we may not know what the problem is. I may think the problem is this, and you may think it's that. So how are we going to even effectively get into that? Or one person in a meeting may have this, wow, this is so critical for them. It's so urgent. And I'm thinking, really? Like, why is that? So how do you do that, right? And part of it is by going, hold on a second, let's just, first of all, every faculty meeting I've ever run, that's not true, most of them, starts with 3 minutes of sitting meditation. I'm fortunate that I have buy-in with the faculty, but it gives us an opportunity to kind of just go, right? And whatever you do with your 3 minutes is up to you. I generally spend it trying to clear my head of what I think I know. Because we talk about biases, we talk about conditioning, we talk about all these different things, but we're all walking around in these conditioned minds. Are trained to see the world in a certain kind of way. This kind of comes back to the Krishnamurti quote, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Which is, in fact, from my perspective, what we live in, right? I think we are acting as antidotes to that, but that doesn't change the reality in which we have our being. Each individual is responsible for the disorder within ourselves. I think about this kind of holistically. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the term holarchy. Ken Wilber uses it in integrative studies. But you have subatomic particles that make atoms, atoms that make molecules, molecules that make cells, cells that make organs, organs that make bodies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are all cells in one body from that perspective. And I actually embrace that, right? So not only is it important that I take responsibility for my disorder, part of what I think that my job is at the university with my students is helping them deal with their disorder, right? So that we can all function collectively in a way that moves us in a direction we are all aspiring to. I talk about aspirational communities a lot with my students and also my daughters. It's super important that we're around people that support us and that we can support. Yeah. Understanding and solving problems begins with accurately defining them and creating common points of reference. Everyone perceives problems to their own perspective and frameworks, so much so that we frequently don't agree as to the degree, importance, or even if something is a problem. So, really where this started was when I go back to the B.B. Miller class, when I'm going, what the hell is actually in a classroom? The other part of the other leg of that, one of the legs of that stool is, I suffer from complex PTSD, from childhood trauma, physical, sexual, verbal abuse. And I think that sometimes I had to do this. I had to do these things, this examination of things, because the framework that I looked at the world through was absolutely untenable. And it was causing a tremendous amount of suffering to myself and people I cared about. And then I started doing this work. And then I started going, wait a minute, what if I take that lens or that set of lenses and start applying it to what I think I am doing with my life with these people? Because, you know, we're dealing with live ammo here. They're real human beings. They're not abstractions. They're humans, right? And I look at every one of these students and think, you're somebody's kid, right? Could be mine. I literally have had my kids in my class, which is really a weird thing to do. Jesus, time goes. Does anybody have any thought, questions? I want to make space for anybody. Like if you have something, an observation, something that you relate to, something that you just don't relate to, please feel free to jump in. Problems are interconnected. Solving them requires shifting perspectives and acknowledging complexity. I am a practitioner of Alexander's technique, and I think it's true. Like, I think what they're telling me when I practice this is true, because I experience it as helpful. But I also recognize that it's a system of understanding the body, not the system of understanding the body. So I do Feldenkrais, and I do this, and I do that, and all of them are true, but they're also incomplete. And thinking about things that way has led me to recognize that I have a perspective too that may be true, but it is by necessity incomplete. So without all of you and the people I'm around, we put all these perspectives together, and suddenly now we're working with something. Right? We have a lot of truths, or partial truths, right? With which we can actually function and start to solve problems. That requires questioning, that requires openness, a kind of radical openness. How many of you do not like to be seen wrong in public? Seen as wrong.
Sure, I'll be honest with you.
I don't like it.
I don't like it at all.
What does that mean?
To be wrong, for example, I give a wrong, somebody corrects me, right? Oh, I'm embarrassed now. Why is that? Why are we embarrassed? Well, it's because we've been told that if you're wrong, you're bad. You're stupid, you're not worthy. And all of us want to belong, so feeling that way is really not useful to us. It's something that we will actively resist. become a know-it-all and the expert, which is an ironic state expert. Like everybody that's an expert in anything, there's still more they don't know about what they are expert in than what they do know. Right? They just know more than most of us. Do you have a thought?
I've had alternative experiences, which I was sharing back there with my mates. Because I've also often told people that when I was teaching, I learned to enjoy my students challenging me in class and
Please.
even pointing out where I was in some way mistaken from their point of view. And then we get into a discussion of that, and I would learn something. So I grew to like that. I mean, it's kind of like being pointed out that you're wrong
Well, here's an interesting.
in public.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I try to get that. Sometimes they sit there mute because they don't want to be seen as being wrong. But then I tell them this: nobody likes to be wrong. But here's the bad news: we are all wrong about something right now. The difference between being ashamed about it and being okay with it is this: being wrong when you don't know you're wrong feels exactly like something else. Feels like being right, doesn't it? Being wrong when you don't know you're wrong feels just like being right. Doesn't it? Yeah. We don't like, so we're all walking around wrong about something and thinking we're right about something. And it really, like, the only time we don't like being wrong is when we find out we're wrong.
Yeah, you really make me think about how quite often people get so embedded in this is the dance program's mission. And really, when I think about that, is if you really think about the way you're talking about this and the way I feel, the mission should always be changing. Because you can't have a mission that stays and works for different classes that come in.
Different
So-
people, each class has its own character, let alone each student.
Absolutely.
I mean, I see that very clearly, but also faculty,
Absolutely.
right? Because we're always hiring lecturers and new people coming in and people leaving and all that. So there is no fixed target. It's all in motion. Yeah.
I was just gonna share, and maybe it's also making me think of the first day when Joyce was talking about the 5-year plan on the shelf. That phrase, life is what happens when you're busy making plans. So I have this plan, and I have this mission, and then this happens over here, and this is really cool. I'm gonna do this. Like, yeah, I have plans that
Life is massively improvised,
Yeah.
if done right. I don't say don't make plans,
right,
but just hold them lightly.
be flexible.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, in dance, you can either do the step right or wrong. Or that's what they teach you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, at least that's how I was taught. And it's also subjective because each body is different, it's a different body,
Yeah.
right? So like the aesthetic is one thing, but that's not gonna apply to everybody. But, so I'm thinking about, teaching our students about when things don't go our way, like when we're wrong, like you're saying, about grit, and that every mistake is an opportunity.
Right.
So when in class, you are called out, oh, you're wrong, that's a teachable moment for everybody.
Precisely. In fact, what I tell students is finding out you're wrong is a massive gift. It is a moment of extreme potential. Like now be happy when you find out you're wrong. Like that is a moment, to put it in Buddhist philosophical terms, that is a moment of enlightenment. It really is. It's a moment to go, holy shit. And now I get to lean into something. But that requires us to also let go of our need to be right. And I, like if I were to sit down and list the pathologies that run around in my head rampantly, at least before I started doing this work, it's a collection you wouldn't want to be a part of. I used to have a friend of mine, he said it succinctly, he said, Joe, if my head said to me the things that your head says to you, I'd have to kill it. Like, it's just, so negative self-talk. right? Now, we all have it. It's a question of degree and how much you believe it. Like how much, and by the way, do I know where it came from? Because it didn't come from me. I wasn't born with it. Right? So anything that, I'm working with this a little bit lately, anything that did not come with the original equipment is not fucking mine. It got in somewhere, and it may be useful, but it also may be destructive. Right, now students oftentimes, my favorite is there are no wrong answers. To which I respond, yes, but some answers are more contextually accurate than others. Right? Yeah, there are wrong answers.
Facts.
Well, but even facts and truth are conditional. I mean, if I let go of this, it's gonna fall. And it's gonna fall 100 times out of 100 times I let go of it. So it's a fact. Unless I go up there a bunch of miles. Like, even that fact is contextually embedded in where I'm at. And I like to think of things that way, like well, is this true? Is it always true? Right? Because it's not really all that important. Now, the other thing is questions. I love questioning things. Here's the problem. When I was a dancer, I would ask why a lot. And you know what I get? Because I said so. And I'm like, and one day, I asked why, and the choreographer actually started yelling at me. And I said, I think you're misunderstanding the nature of my inquiry. I'm asking you so I understand how you're doing it. I'm not challenging that you're doing it. I just want to understand what's happening, right? I've never seen a choreographer yell at you and then become embarrassed that fast. I said, I'm here to fulfill what you're at. I'm here on your side. But if you don't know that, you don't know that. The question of questions for me is really about this. The students and faculty, if you ask a question, they want to give you an answer. They just do. They think you're seeking information rather than trying to elicit dialogue. Right? And oftentimes the sort of Socratic method, whatever you want to call it, wherever it came from, I'm sure it existed in many forms besides that. Questions iteratively asked beget better questions, beget better questions, which are way better than the answer that they think I want to hear, or the one they want to tell me. So I tell students, I am far more interested in the quality of your questions than I am in any answer that you have for me. Right? And what I really don't give a shit about is hearing you repeat back to me something you just heard me say. Like, what are you gonna do with that? And creating space for them to do that. But that happens, let's face it, this is very disheartening news. Something like 57 to 63% of the adult functional population in this country are operating at what Robert Keegan says is an adolescent level of psychological development. If you read the newspaper, you know he's right. Right? It's a strange thing. And part of that comes from just people being obedient. Students being obedient, trying to get the A instead of the knowledge that diploma implies. But everyone trying to just get it right and get it done. So for example, what are the underlying questions about what we do? Right? There was a thing yesterday, somebody mentioned they weren't ready. Right? But if 23% of the people in our programs are going to dance professionally, and the other 77% aren't, or whatever that percentage is, what do I think I'm doing there? And the student said, well, you're supposed to teach me technique. And I said, with all due respect, if I thought for 1 second my life's work was teaching you how to point your foot, I'd put a gun in my mouth. Like, it's just not important enough. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying it doesn't have use. This is not a value judgment about the thing. It's about what we're doing. Anyway, there's a lot more I would have gotten to if I had longer. You may have noticed, or maybe you haven't, my mind tends to be very associative and extrapolative. And like, ask yourselves, what is one thing you like about yourself? Like, what is one thing you like about yourself? For me, it's that my mind works that way. Like, I find it really, really fun. Okay, Alonzo King, I studied with him for 10 years. He's held my babies. I consider him my aesthetic godfather. My work professionally was nothing like his work, but his philosophy that I lived with for 10 years or more really seeped into my bones and has been kind of a guiding principle. That seems to make sense when it comes to what we're doing here, or what we think we're doing here. Forsyth, just love the work, and I love the mind. I love how curious this person is. And it says, he said, I am of the class of people for whom ideas bring pleasure. It's something that can be cultivated, like that pleasure of that. And then James Baldwin, I somehow or another stumbled across his body of work when I was a young man, and it changed my life, like in every possible way. It made me ask questions that I had not previously asked. I didn't like the answers, but it gave me a direction. So, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And that is where we get the questions. That's where and all this is embedded in practice. And sometimes we don't know how many people say, I'm gonna meditate, and then don't for a month and a half. So the practice of practice is just learning how to practice. Just like learning how to tie your shoes and finding which ones resonate with you. Am I out of time here?
Thank you.